The boarding gate had already begun to close when Marisol Reyes placed her ticket on the counter and said the sentence that would cost her almost everything she had left. "Give my seat to him." The gate agent stared at her as if she had misheard. Behind Mari, a line of tired travelers shifted beneath the fluorescent lights of LaGuardia Airport. Rolling suitcases clicked over the tile. A child complained about being hungry. Somewhere beyond the windows, freezing rain streaked across the glass and turned the runway lights into blurred red and white smears. The elderly man standing beside the counter looked just as stunned. He wore a faded brown coat with one loose button, grey slacks, and shoes polished so many times that the leather had thinned at the toes. His silver hair was damp from the weather. One hand held an old canvas overnight bag. The other remained pressed against the edge of the counter, as though he needed it to steady himself. "Young lady," he said, "you do not have to do that." Mari looked at the boarding pass again. New York to Seattle, seat 18A, the last direct flight that evening. At 9 the next morning, she was supposed to sit across from 3 executives at Harbor and Pine Logistics and convince them that she deserved the most important job interview of her life. She had spent nearly all her remaining savings on that ticket and had no backup plan. She knew all of that. Still, she slid the boarding pass closer to the agent. "He needs to get there more than I do." A man in a charcoal suit standing nearby gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "That is a $700 ticket." Mari did not look at him. The old man did. "I can pay you back," he said quickly. "I can—" "No." Mari's voice was calm. "Please don't." The gate agent leaned forward. "Ms. Reyes, I need you to understand. Because of the weather, there may not be another confirmed seat tonight. If I release this one, I cannot promise when you'll get to Seattle." Mari's fingers tightened around the strap of her worn black backpack. For a moment, she saw everything she was risking. The interview, the salary, the chance to stop calculating groceries down to the dollar, and the possibility of easing her mother's workload. Then she looked at the elderly man. 10 minutes earlier, he had been pleading with the gate staff to help him reach his granddaughter before she went into a medical procedure early the next morning. He had explained that the procedure was expected to go well, but the 9-year-old girl was frightened. Her parents were with her. She kept asking whether her grandfather would arrive before she was taken upstairs. The airport had no seat to give him. Mari did. "Transfer it," she said. The agent studied her face one final time, then nodded. The printer behind the counter came alive. Mari heard the soft mechanical whir and felt strangely, as though she were listening to a door close. She had no way of knowing that another door had just opened. 3 weeks earlier, Mari had been sitting in a windowless conference room in Long Island City, while a human resources manager explained that her position no longer existed. There had been a printed packet on the table, a paper cup of coffee she had not touched, and a small box of tissues positioned with uncomfortable precision between them. "We are consolidating regional planning," the woman had said. "This is not a reflection of your performance." Mari had almost smiled at that sentence. For 6 years, companies had found increasingly polished ways to tell hard-working people that the numbers had changed. She had nodded, accepted the packet, thanked the woman, and walked back to her desk. She finished documenting the vendor schedule she had been rebuilding, organized her files, and at 5:30 carried a cardboard box into the cold. Inside were a family photograph and a tiny woven keychain shaped like a jeepney that her cousin had brought from Manila. Mari was 31 years old. She had been born in Iloilo City and moved to New York with her mother when she was 13. Her earliest memories of America were winter coats that felt too heavy, subway maps that seemed impossible, and her mother, Elena, repeating the same sentence whenever Mari became overwhelmed. One thing at a time. Hanak! One thing at a time. It became the rhythm of Mari's life. Learn English without fearing mistakes, finish school, help with bills, earn a degree at night while working during the day. Keep going. Her mother never asked Mari to become responsible for everyone. Mari simply noticed what needed to be done and did it. That instinct had made her excellent at logistics. It had also made her tired in ways she rarely admitted. After the layoff, she told Elena that work was slowing down for a few weeks. She told her younger brother Nico, a community college student in Queens, that she was using vacation days. Neither statement was exactly true. Every morning, Mari opened her laptop at the kitchen table of their small Jackson Heights apartment and searched for jobs while the elevated train rumbled several blocks away. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, an email appeared. Harbor and Pine Logistics. Final interview invitation. Seattle. Washington. Director of Network Strategy. Mari read the message twice before calling the recruiter to make sure it was real. Harbor and Pine managed distribution networks across the West Coast and had recently announced a major expansion. The position would more than double Mari's previous salary. It would also give her authority to build systems instead of quietly repairing other people's decisions. There was only one problem. The company wanted the final interview in person. Mari checked the airfare and felt her stomach tighten. Holiday travel, bad weather, short notice, $742. She had $980 left after rent and household bills. For nearly an hour, she stared at the booking page. Then Elena came home carrying a paper bag of pan de sal from a Filipino bakery on Roosevelt Avenue. "You look like someone is asking you to solve the whole world," her mother said. Marie closed the laptop too quickly. "No, just work stuff." Elena placed the bread on the counter and studied her daughter with the patient expression mothers developed after years of being lied to for kind reasons. "Mari," that was all. Mari looked down. "I have an interview in Seattle." Her mother's face changed instantly. "Seattle? Friday morning. That's wonderful. The flight is expensive." Eleanor shrugged as if this were merely weather. "Then expensive is what it is." Mari laughed softly. "That is not how money works. It is how opportunities work sometimes." Mari looked at her mother's hands, still dry from constant washing at the nursing home, and made the decision. She bought the ticket that night. 2 days later, she arrived at LaGuardia carrying one backpack, one navy blazer, printed copies of her resume, and the belief that if she could just get on that airplane, everything might finally begin moving forward again. Then an elderly stranger arrived at the gate asking for help, and now, as the printer produced a new boarding pass with his name instead of hers, Mari watched the future she had purchased disappear into someone else's hands. The old man looked at the ticket, then at her. His eyes had filled with tears, but his voice remained steady. "What is your name?" "Marisol Reyes." "Mari?" He repeated it carefully. "Mari Reyes," as if he intended never to forget it. The old man held the boarding pass with both hands as though it were more fragile than paper. "Mari," he said again, "I need you to know that my granddaughter is not in danger. The doctors have told us the procedure is routine, but she has never spent a night in a hospital before, and she is afraid of everything she cannot see coming." Mari nodded. That detail mattered to her. It made the situation feel less like tragedy and more like something she understood. A person trying to be present when presence itself was the only useful thing left to offer. "What's her name?" she asked. "Lily." "Then go be with Lily." The gate agent handed him the new pass. Boarding was nearly complete. The elderly man looked toward the jet bridge, then back at Mari, clearly torn between gratitude and disbelief. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and removed a plain cream-colored card. "I know you said you don't want repayment. I don't. This is not repayment." He placed the card in her hand. "It is simply a way to find me, if you ever change your mind about needing help." Mari glanced down. The card contained only a name and a phone number. Arthur Bennett. No company. No title, no address. She slipped it into the outer pocket of her backpack. "I probably won't call." A faint smile appeared beneath his tired expression. "I suspected that." Then he surprised her by adding, "My wife used to say the people least likely to ask for help are often the ones who have been helping everyone else too long." Mari felt the sentence land somewhere uncomfortable. Before she could answer, the gate agent called his name. Arthur lifted the canvas bag, gave Mari one last look, and walked toward the jet bridge. Halfway there, he turned. "Thank you, Ms. Reyes." Mari raised one hand. Then he disappeared around the corner. The door closed. Only after the aircraft began moving away from the gate did Mari allow herself to look at the departure screen. C departed. Her chest tightened. For the first time since giving up the seat, the practical consequences arrived all at once. She was still in New York. Her interview was in Seattle in less than 13 hours. Her bank account contained $238, and she had just voluntarily surrendered a ticket she could not afford to replace. The man in the charcoal suit was still nearby. You realize you may have thrown away a career opportunity for a stranger. Maybe, Mari said. That doesn't bother you? It bothers me a lot. Doing the right thing and feeling comfortable are not the same thing. He considered that, nodded once and left. The gate agent, whose badge read Janelle Park, motioned Mari back to the counter. I've been looking at options. Mari stepped closer immediately. There's a flight through Denver at 6:10 tomorrow morning, Janelle said. It is oversold, but the weather has created enough movement that standby might clear. There is also a 7 o'clock through Minneapolis, but that gets you into Seattle after 11. The Denver connection, if everything worked perfectly, would land at 8:45. Her interview in Bellevue was at 9, almost impossible. Put me on the Denver standby list, Janelle typed. There's a reissue fee, but because of the weather disruption, I can waive most of it. You'd owe $36. Mari almost laughed from relief. Do it. A minute later, she was holding a standby receipt that promised nothing and somehow felt like hope. She found a quiet corner near a closed coffee kiosk and called her mother. Eleanor answered on the first ring. You boarded? Mari looked at the dark window beside her. Not exactly. There was silence. What happened? Mari told her. She expected her mother to say the decision had been reckless. Eleanor understood money too well to romanticize losing $700. Instead, Eleanor said, Was he able to go? Yes. Then good. Mari frowned. Ma, I might miss the interview. Yes. I spent almost everything on that flight. Yes. You're being strangely calm. Eleanor sighed softly. Because if I tell you that you made a foolish decision, you will spend the whole night defending it to yourself. If I tell you that you made a beautiful decision, you will spend the whole night worrying that I don't understand the cost. So I will tell you the truth. Mari leaned back against the plastic airport chair. What truth? You made a choice. Now make the next one. Mari closed her eyes. One thing at a time. Her mother continued, Can you still get there? Maybe. Standby flight at 6:10. Then your job tonight is not to regret. Your job is to get on that plane. Mari smiled despite herself. Okay. And eat something. I'm not hungry. That was not a question. Mari laughed quietly. After they hung up, she bought the cheapest hot meal she could find, a bowl of soup and a small roll, then returned to the gate area and opened her laptop. If she arrived late, she would need to explain herself without turning the story into an excuse. She drafted an email to the recruiter. Due to severe weather and an unexpected passenger situation, I may experience a delay tomorrow morning. I remain fully committed to attending the interview and will update you as soon as I have confirmed travel. She deleted unexpected passenger situation and replaced it with airline disruption. The truth did not always need to be advertised. At 11:40, the recruiter replied, Thank you for letting us know. Travel safely. We will do our best to accommodate reasonable delays. Mari stared at the message. Nothing about the night felt reasonable. She tucked the laptop away and pulled her blazer from the backpack. It was wrapped carefully around a folder containing her resumes. She smoothed the fabric over her knees, checking for wrinkles. Across from her, Janelle was finishing paperwork at the gate. The airport grew quieter after midnight. Cleaning machines hummed across distant corridors. Screens continued changing, even when almost no one was watching them. Mari tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she pictured the Seattle skyline, then the interview room, then Arthur's face when she had told him to go. At 1:30 in the morning, she reached into her backpack for a phone charger and felt the edge of his cream-colored card. Arthur Bennett. Call any time. For a moment, Mary wondered who he was. The card looked expensive despite its simplicity. For a moment she considered calling and asking whether he knew anyone at the airline. Mary put the card back. She had given him the seat because he needed it. Turning it into a debt would make it something else. At 4:50 she washed her face in the restroom, tied her hair back, changed into her white blouse, and put on the navy blazer. By 5:30, Gate C7 had filled with sleepy travelers waiting for the Denver flight. Mary stood near the counter and watched names appear on the standby screen. There were 9 people ahead of her, then 7, then 5. At 6 o'clock, boarding began. Her name still had not moved. At 6:12, the agent called the final confirmed passenger. Mary's heart sank. The door remained open. The agent looked down at the screen. "Standby passenger Reyes?" Mary stopped breathing. "Marisol Reyes?" She stepped forward. The agent smiled and lifted a boarding pass. "Looks like Denver is waiting for you." Mary did not celebrate when the boarding pass touched her hand. She simply thanked the agent, stepped through the door, and walked down the jet bridge before anyone could change their mind. Her seat was in the last row, between a college student wearing headphones and a woman already asleep against the window. Mary buckled in, placed her backpack beneath her feet and checked the time. 6:19 a.m. If the plane left now, if the connection in Denver was clean, if Seattle traffic was merciful, she might arrive close enough to the interview to be forgiven. There were too many ifs to control. Mary rested her head against the seat and remembered something her father used to tell her when she was a child in Iloilo. He had worked as a mechanic at a small bus depot and could repair almost anything with patience, wire, and the correct wrench. "Do not fight the part you cannot touch," he would say. "Fix the part in your hands." Her father had remained in the Philippines when Mary and Elena moved to New York. Life rearranged those plans, but they still spoke every Sunday across the distance. Now his old advice returned at 30,000 feet. The part in her hands was preparation. Mary reviewed her interview notes until the words blurred. She had studied Harbour and Pine's public reports, shipping data, and leadership interviews, identifying 3 operational problems she believed she could address. She had prepared not to impress them, but to solve something. That distinction mattered. The flight landed in Denver 20 minutes late. Mary ran. She hated running through airports. It made everyone look desperate, and she already felt desperate enough. Still, she moved as quickly as she could through the crowded concourse, backpack bouncing against her shoulder, following signs toward Gate B42. When she reached it, boarding had already begun. A line stretched across the carpet. Mary looked at the screen and nearly laughed. On time. For once, those 2 words felt miraculous. Her connecting seat was confirmed. Janelle's rebooking had carried through. Mary boarded, found a window seat, and finally allowed herself to send her mother a message. "Made Denver. Next stop Seattle." Elena replied less than a minute later. "See? One thing at a time. Also eat." Mary smiled and put the phone away. She slept for most of the second flight. When she opened her eyes, morning light was spilling across a landscape of dark water, islands, evergreen trees, and neighborhoods arranged beneath low gray clouds. The plane curved over Puget Sound, and Seattle appeared in pieces, towers in the distance, cranes near the waterfront, highways threading around hills. Mary pressed her forehead lightly to the window. She had never been to Washington State. For months, her world had felt increasingly small. The apartment, the subway, the office that had let her go, the kitchen table where she searched for work. Now the city below looked wide enough to contain another version of her life. The wheels touched down at 8:51. Her interview had started 6 minutes earlier. The moment the aircraft stopped, Mary turned on her phone. 3 messages appeared from the recruiter Dana Cho. 8:12. "Good morning, Mary. Please keep me posted." 8:35. "We understand you are traveling through weather delays. Your interview panel can remain available until 10:30. 8:47. "If you are able to make it to Bellevue this morning, please come directly to reception when you arrive." Mary exhaled slowly. She had a chance. Not a good one. A chance. She ordered a rideshare before reaching baggage claim. She had no checked luggage, which suddenly felt brilliant. The driver, A middle-aged man named Luis glanced at her destination. Bellevue in morning traffic? How bad? He made a face. Depends how much the universe likes you. It has been undecided since last night. Luis laughed and pulled away from the curb. As the car moved north, Mari used the phone camera as a mirror. Her hair had escaped its tie. Her blouse was creased. The navy blazer looked as though it had spent the night folded inside a backpack, because it had. She fixed what she could. At a red light, she reached for concealer, then stopped. She was exhausted, and there was nothing shameful about looking like someone who had traveled all night to show up. They crossed Lake Washington under a pale sky. The skyline of Bellevue rose ahead, clean glass buildings reflecting the morning. Her phone rang. Dana Cho. Mari answered immediately. Hi, Dana. I just crossed into Bellevue. I'm sorry. Don't apologize while you're still moving toward us, Dana said. Her voice was warm and efficient. How far? 8 minutes, according to the driver. Good. Come as you are. We'll adjust. Mari hesitated. I appreciate that. One question. Were you affected by the flight cancellations at LaGuardia? Yes. That was true, though not complete. Dana did not press. Then we'll see you soon. The call ended. Mari watched office towers pass outside the window. Her reflection floated over them in the glass. She thought about Arthur Bennett. By now he was probably with Lily. She hoped the girl had slept. She hoped Arthur had arrived before she became frightened. And for the first time, Mari wondered whether he would remember the woman from the airport. Once the stressful night was over, she decided she preferred not knowing. The rideshare stopped in front of a 24-story building with dark green letters above a wide stone entrance. Harbor and E. Pine Logistics. 9:46 a.m. Marie paid the fare and checked her bank balance, $159. A week earlier, that number would have frightened her. Now it simply existed. She stepped onto the sidewalk and looked up at the building. This is the part in my hands, she whispered. Inside, the lobby was quieter than she expected. Warm wood panels softened the glass and steel. A large digital display showed container ships, rail lines, and distribution centers across the country. At reception, a young man in a grey sweater smiled. Good morning. How can I help you? Marisol Reyes. I'm here for the Director of Network Strategy interview. His fingers paused above the keyboard. Marisol Reyes? Yes. He looked at the screen, then at her again. The pause lasted just long enough to make Mari nervous. Is something wrong? No. His expression changed into something she could not read. Not at all. One moment. He picked up the phone and spoke quietly to someone. Mari stood beside the desk, aware of every wrinkle in her blazer. A minute later, an elevator opened across the lobby. A woman in her 40s stepped out. She wore navy trousers, a cream sweater, and a visitor badge clipped to her belt. Mari? Yes. I'm Dana Cho. We've been emailing. Mari extended her hand. Thank you for waiting. I know I'm late. Dana shook her hand firmly. You are. But you communicated, and you came anyway. Both matter. Mari appreciated the directness. Your panel has been rearranged, Dana continued. Mari's stomach tightened. Rearranged how? Dana glanced toward the elevator. The chairman asked to meet you first. Mari stared at her. The chairman? Yes. I thought the final interview was with the COO, the regional VP, and you. It was. Was. Dana gave the smallest smile. Something changed this morning. The elevator doors remained open behind her. Mari felt the cream-colored business card inside her backpack as clearly as if she were holding it. Arthur Bennett. For the first time since landing, she wondered whether the universe had not been undecided after all. The elevator climbed in near silence. Mari stood beside Dana Cho and watched the floor numbers change above the doors. 12, 15, 18. She wanted to ask why the chairman had changed her interview schedule and whether Arthur Bennett had anything to do with it. Instead, she said nothing. At the 23rd floor, Dana stepped out into a reception area that felt more like a quiet library than an executive office. There were no oversized portraits, no gold plaques, No dramatic display of wealth. Just warm wood, framed photographs of ports and rail yards, and windows looking west toward the lake. Dana stopped outside a set of double doors. "Before you go in," she said, "I want you to know that your original interview panel is still happening. Nothing about the professional process has been cancelled." Mari looked at her. That is somehow reassuring and terrifying at the same time. Dana smiled. "Good. You're awake." She opened the door. Mari stepped inside. The office was large but simple. A long table occupied one side. On the other, a desk faced the windows. Seattle's skyline was visible across the water beneath a ceiling of grey clouds. A man stood with his back to the room. He wore a dark suit, silver hair, straight shoulders. For one strange second, Mari thought she had been wrong. The man at LaGuardia had seemed smaller, almost folded by exhaustion and worry. Then he turned. Arthur Bennett smiled. Mari stopped walking. The airport coat was gone, so was the old canvas bag. He looked rested, composed, and entirely at home in the room. "Good morning, Ms. Reyes." Mari stared at him. "Arthur?" His smile widened slightly. "I was hoping you would still call me that." Dana quietly closed the door behind Mari and left them alone. Mari's eyes moved from Arthur to the desk, then to a framed photograph on the wall. In it, a younger Arthur stood beside a container terminal wearing a hard hat. Beneath the image was a small brass plate. Arthur Bennett, founder, 1989. Mari looked back at him. "No." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "No? You're Arthur Bennett. I did tell you my name. The Arthur Bennett." He gave a quiet laugh. "I have spent most of my life hoping there was not a "the" in front of it." Mari was no longer listening to herself think clearly. She had studied Harbour and Pine for days. Arthur Bennett had founded the company with 2 rented trucks and a small Tacoma warehouse, then built a national logistics network. Recent photographs always showed him in a suit beside executives. None looked like the exhausted grandfather at gate D14. "You own this company." "Not all of it anymore," he said, "but enough that people still return my calls." Mari covered her mouth for a moment, then lowered her hand. Arthur gestured toward a chair. "Please sit, before this becomes more dramatic than it needs to be." She sat. He took the chair across from her rather than returning to the desk. "First," he said, "Lily is fine." Mari's shoulders dropped before she realized they had been tense. "The procedure went exactly as the doctors expected. She was frightened beforehand, but I got there with time to spare." Mari smiled. "Good." Arthur looked at her carefully. "She asked why I was late. I told her there had been a storm and that a stranger gave me her seat." Mari looked down. "She said that sounded like something from a movie." "It felt less impressive from the airport floor." Arthur laughed. Then his expression softened. "She wanted to know your name." Mari looked up. "I told her." For several seconds, neither spoke. Arthur finally leaned back. "My travel situation last night was unusual. I had been in New York for meetings. The charter service we use cancelled because of the weather, and my staff booked the last commercial option they could find. By the time I reached the airport, the seat they had been trying to secure was gone." "And nobody recognized you?" "Some people did. They simply were not at the gate." Mari remembered the worn coat. Arthur noticed. "That coat belonged to my brother," he said. "I keep it in our New York office because he used to complain that I never dressed warmly enough. It is older than half the people who work downstairs." Mari smiled. Then a thought struck her. "How did you know I was interviewing here?" Arthur did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached toward the small table beside him and picked up a folder. Her name was printed on the tab. Marisol Reyes. Mari stared at it. "This was already on my desk yesterday afternoon," Arthur said. "I review the final candidates for certain leadership roles, especially operations positions. I did not recognize you at the airport because the resume photograph in our internal profile is small, and I had seen dozens of files that week." Mari felt heat rise into her face. "You knew this morning?" "Yes." "When?" "About 5:15. She blinked. "How?" My assistant called to tell me the final interview schedule. She mentioned that one candidate might be delayed coming from New York. Your name was Marisol Reyes. Arthur paused. I remembered it immediately. Mari looked toward the windows. The coincidence was so improbable she almost laughed. So this meeting is because I gave you the seat. This meeting is because I wanted to thank you face to face. Mari's expression tightened slightly. Arthur noticed. But your interview, he continued, is not. She looked back at him. I need that distinction to be very clear. Arthur opened her folder. You were selected as one of 4 finalists before I met you. Your work on Northeast distribution recovery after the Newark warehouse closure was specifically mentioned by 2 people on the panel. Your routing model reduced over time while improving delivery windows. You also redesigned vendor escalation procedures without being asked. Mari stared at him. Those were details from years of work most senior leaders at her old company barely acknowledged. Arthur continued. You did not get on a plane because Harbour and Pine felt sorry for you. You got on a plane because you earned an interview. Mari's throat tightened. He closed the folder. What happened at LaGuardia tells me something about your character. It does not tell me whether you can lead a national network. That is what the next room is for. Mari let out a slow breath. Thank you. Arthur nodded. Then he reached into his jacket and placed the same cream-colored business card on the table between them. One question before Dana takes you downstairs. Mari waited. You had my number all night. Why didn't you call? She looked at the card. Because if I called you to solve the problem I created by helping you, then part of me would always wonder whether I had really given you anything. Arthur became very still. Mari continued, quieter now. I wanted the choice to stay a choice. For the first time that morning, the powerful founder of Harbour and Pine had no immediate response. He simply looked at her. Then he stood and walked to the door. When he opened it, Dana was waiting outside. Arthur looked at her, then back at Mari. Miss Cho, please take Miss Reyes to the panel. Dana nodded. Arthur added, and make sure they do not go easy on her. Mari raised an eyebrow. He smiled. She did not come this far for easy. Dana did not speak until the elevator doors closed. Then she turned to Mari. You look like you just discovered your cab driver owns the airport. Mari laughed before she could stop herself. That is close enough. Good. Laugh now. The panel is less entertaining. By the 17th floor, Mari had pushed Arthur Bennett and the impossible coincidence into a mental drawer. For the next hour, she needed to be the woman who had spent 6 years learning how freight moved when schedules failed. The interview room contained 3 people. Dana took the seat nearest the door. Across the table sat Evelyn Ross, Harbour and Pine's chief operating officer, a composed woman in her 50s with silver-framed glasses. Beside her was Daniel Kim, senior vice president of network operations, whose interviews Mari had watched during her preparation. Evelyn stood and shook Mari's hand. I understand your morning has been complicated. That is one word for it. Do you need time before we begin? Mari considered the offer. No, thank you. Evelyn nodded as if the answer had told her something. The first questions were familiar. Why Harbour and Pine? Why leave her previous employer? What kind of team did she want to lead? Mari answered carefully without performing enthusiasm. My previous role ended in a restructuring, she said, when asked why she was available. I wish it had happened differently, but it forced me to ask whether I wanted another job where I was useful or a role where I could actually be responsible for the decisions. Daniel leaned forward. What is the difference? Useful people fix problems after they arrive. Responsible leaders build conditions where fewer of those problems arrive in the first place. Daniel made a note. Then the interview changed. Evelyn slid a packet across the table. Assume this is your network. The packet contained performance reports for 8 distribution sites, delays, labor hours, missed appointments, empty miles, and carrier costs. You have 15 minutes, Evelyn said. Tell us where you would start. Mari forgot she was tired. Numbers calmed her because they did not care how confident someone sounded. They left tracks. She studied the reports. Tacoma appeared to be the obvious problem, with the highest missed handoff rate. But labor hours were stable, and carrier arrivals mostly on time. Portland, meanwhile, showed unusually perfect performance. She checked the transfer schedules between Portland and Tacoma. Then she saw it. The dashboard is blaming Tacoma for a planning problem that starts in Portland. Daniel's pen stopped. Explain. Mari turned the packet toward them. Portland is protecting its local metric by releasing mixed loads later in the day. They still count as on time when they leave Portland, but Tacoma receives them after its efficient sorting window. Tacoma either adds labor or misses the handoff. If managers are rewarded site by site, Portland looks excellent and Tacoma looks weak. Evelyn's expression remained neutral. What would you do? First, verify that the sample reflects reality. Then change the metric. Shared freight should have a shared performance measure. If two sites can improve their own numbers by making the other site worse, you do not have a network. You have 8 departments competing inside the same logo. Silence. Mari wondered whether she had been too direct. Daniel leaned back. That scenario is based on a real problem we had 18 months ago. Mari blinked. How long did it take us to identify? She smiled carefully. I assume longer than 15 minutes or you would not be asking. Dana hid a smile behind her hand. Even Evelyn's mouth shifted slightly. 6 weeks, Daniel said. The remaining questions became harder. A senior manager with excellent results resisted a new process. What would Mari do? Listen first. Test whether the resistance contained information. If it was only preference, set a clear deadline and move forward. A major customer demanded special treatment that disrupted service for smaller accounts. What then? Calculate the true cost of the exception, show it plainly, and make the commercial decision visible, rather than letting operations quietly absorb it. Her team made an error that caused a costly delay. Who took responsibility? The leader does publicly. The team studies it privately. Accountability should improve the system, not make people afraid to tell you what happened. Evelyn finally closed her notebook. One last question. You arrived nearly an hour late to a final interview for a director-level role. Why should we not treat that as evidence of poor judgment? Dana looked down at the table. Mari knew Arthur had not told them the story, or if he had, Evelyn was giving her the chance to decide how much to reveal. Mari could have explained everything, but that would have made the choice sound larger than it was. Arthur and Lily had not been in danger. Mari had simply chosen one important thing over another, so she answered without decorating it. You should consider it. Evelyn's eyebrows rose. Mari continued. I made a decision at the airport that increased the risk that I would be late. I knew that when I made it. I communicated the delay as soon as I could, found another route and came anyway. I believe the choice was right, but believing it was right does not erase the consequence. If you decide the consequence matters more for this role, I have to accept that. Evelyn watched her for several seconds. Fair answer. The interview ended at 11:20. Outside the conference room, exhaustion returned. Her shoulders ached. She wanted a shower, a bed, and 12 hours in which nobody asked her to optimize anything. Dana walked her back toward reception. You did well, she said. Mari looked at her. Are recruiters allowed to say that? Probably not in writing. Mari smiled. Thank you for making room for me. You made the room useful. At the lobby, Mari checked flights back to New York. The cheapest option left late that evening. She could spend the afternoon at the airport and be home by morning. Her phone buzzed with a message from Nico. Ma says interview day. Good luck, Ate. Also, she finally told me you got laid off, so you are terrible at secrets. Mari closed her eyes. Of course Elena had told him now. Another message appeared. Don't worry about us. Just do your thing. Mari smiled, then felt her eyes sting unexpectedly. She was typing a reply when Dana approached again. Mari. Something in her tone made Mari lower the phone. Yes? Do not book your flight yet. Mari stared at her. Dana held a folder she had not been carrying before. The panel wants to move you to the next stage. I thought this was the final stage. It was supposed to be. Mari laughed softly. I am starting to dislike that sentence. Dana handed her the folder. Inside was a one-page brief. Tacoma Field Assessment, Finalist Exercise. Mary looked up. Harbor and Pine has a live operational issue at one of our facilities, Dana said. Nothing dangerous, nothing dramatic. Just expensive, persistent and resistant to every solution we have tried. 2 finalists remain. We want each of you to spend 48 hours observing the operation and present your recommendation Monday morning. Marie looked back at the paper. Transportation and hotel would be covered, and the assessment would be paid. At the bottom, one line made her pulse quicken. Final hiring decision to follow. Dana waited. Marie thought she had crossed the country to reach the finish line. Instead, she had arrived at another starting point. When do we leave for Tacoma? She asked. The road from Bellevue to Tacoma ran beneath a low ceiling of clouds, with Lake Washington disappearing behind Marie as Dana Cho drove south through late morning traffic. Marie sat in the passenger seat with the field assessment folder open across her knees. 48 hours, 1 operating problem, 2 finalists, no guarantee that either of them would be hired. For the first time since LaGuardia, the challenge in front of her felt almost ordinary. That was a relief. You can sleep if you want, Dana said. Marie kept reading. If I sleep now, I may wake up in New Mexico. Dana smiled. Fair. The packet described Harbor and Pine's Tacoma Cross-Dock Center, a large transfer facility that moved freight between coastal ports, regional warehouses, and inland distribution sites. For 11 consecutive weeks, its overnight outbound departures had missed target windows, often enough to increase carrier charges and create morning delays across 3 states. Nothing catastrophic had happened. No single customer had left. No dramatic failure had made the news. The problem was worse in a quieter way. It kept happening. The company had added labor, changed supervisors, adjusted appointment times, and installed new planning software. The results improved for a few days, then slid backward. What are you actually testing? Marie asked. Dana glanced at her. You. I walked into that one. We know the site has a problem. We also know smart people have already looked at it. The panel wants to see how you behave when the answer is not waiting in a spreadsheet. Marie closed the folder. And the other finalist? You'll meet him in 10 minutes. Harbor and Pine's Tacoma facility sat near the industrial waterfront, surrounded by rail spurs, container yards, warehouses, and long roads built for trucks rather than pedestrians. The building itself was broad and practical, its loading doors repeating along the concrete walls like numbered squares on a board. Inside the front office, a man stood when Dana entered. He was tall, perhaps 38, with close-cropped dark hair and a blue company jacket folded over one arm. Mari Reyes, Dana said. This is Adrian Park. Adrian currently runs our Phoenix regional operation. Internal candidate. Mari understood immediately. Adrian extended his hand. I heard you had an interesting trip. Mari shook it. That is apparently becoming company knowledge faster than I'd like. I heard only that weather tried to keep you in New York and lost. Then the story is improving. He smiled. There was no arrogance in him, which was almost inconvenient. Mari had spent part of the drive preparing herself not to be intimidated by a polished rival. Adrian, instead, seemed like someone she might have enjoyed working with. A woman in a reflective vest entered through the side door. I'm Tessa Nguyen, site manager. Welcome to the building everyone has an opinion about. Her tone was dry but not defensive. She led them into a conference room where a wall screen displayed the previous night's performance. 3 departures late, 1 by 19 minutes, 1 by 34, 1 by 51. Our day shift receives freight, Tessa explained. Second shift sorts and stages it. Overnight teams build final outbound loads. Most late departures happen between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. We have enough labor. Equipment availability is within target. Attendance is stable. Yet the same pattern keeps returning. Adrian asked, what does the local leadership team believe is causing it? Depends which leader you ask. Corporate planning. They think execution discipline. Carriers. They think dock congestion. Your supervisors. They think everyone else. Mari almost smiled. Tessa noticed. You see why this is fun? Dana reviewed the rules. Mary and Adrian could observe any non-restricted workflow, ask questions, request reports, and attend shift meetings. They had no authority over employees. Any test affecting live freight required Tessa's approval. Most important, Dana said, you are not here to perform leadership theatre. Do not order people around because someone gave you a visitor badge. Adrian nodded. Mary said, that rule should be printed in larger font. The tour began on the receiving side. Forklifts moved pallets between painted lanes. Scanners chirped. Overhead monitors showed doors, trailers, destinations, and departure deadlines. The operation looked busy but controlled. Mary watched more than she spoke. At door 12, a team finished unloading a mixed trailer from Portland. At door 19, freight for Spokane waited in 2 staging lanes. Farther down, an employee erased a door number from a whiteboard and wrote another beside it. Mary stopped. How often do door assignments change? She asked. Tessa looked toward the board. More than I'd like. Why? Late arrivals, priority changes, trailer availability, planning updates, Adrian asked. Is that captured in the system? Some of it. Mary looked again at the erased number. Some of it was usually where expensive problems lived. They spent the next 2 hours in separate parts of the building. Mary began with the people who touched the freight. She asked a forklift operator named Luis what made a good night difficult. Changing the plan after we already did the plan, he said. A dock coordinator named Jasmine gave nearly the same answer. You build door 24 for Boise, then an update moves Boise to 31 because another trailer needs 24. So you move what you staged. Then a late priority order comes in, and now part of Boise is mixed with something else. Does the dashboard count that as rework? Mary asked. Jasmine shook her head. It counts movement. Mary wrote that down. Movement was not the same as progress. At lunch, she found Adrian in the break room studying maintenance logs. Anything? He asked. Too much. That usually means nothing yet. Exactly. He tapped the report in front of him. I'm looking at dock equipment outages, small ones. 5 minutes here, 9 minutes there. The official uptime number is good, but maybe the timing matters more than the total. Mary nodded. That could be part of it. He looked at her notes. You? Plan changes that are invisible as rework. Adrian considered that rather than dismissing it. Could also be part of it. They both laughed. By early evening, Mary had filled 12 pages of notes and reached no conclusion she trusted. That bothered the old version of her, the one who believed competence meant having an answer before anyone noticed she was still searching. Instead of forcing one, she returned to the dock. Second shift was beginning. Tessa stood near the scheduling board with a supervisor named Ben, reviewing outbound doors. Mary watched Ben circle 3 door numbers in red marker. Those changed? She asked. 10 minutes ago. Why? Central planning update. When was the original load plan released? 4:30. Mary checked the clock. 6:18 p.m. Almost 2 hours of work had been organized around a plan that could still be rearranged from somewhere else. Ben, she erased door 31 and rewrote the destination beside door 27. Underneath the fresh marker, faint lettering remained from an earlier shift. Door 31 again. Mary stared at it. Not an official note, not a metric, just the exhausted handwriting of someone who had already lived through the same correction too many times. The assignment had asked why Tacoma could not move freight on time. For the first time, Mary wondered whether the real problem was not movement at all. Maybe it was certainty. By 11 that night, Mary understood why daytime reports had failed to explain Tacoma. The building became a different organism after dark. Inbound trailers continued arriving, while outbound crews raced against fixed departure windows. Forklifts crossed the dock in carefully marked lanes. Radios crackled with door changes. Supervisors checked screens, then whiteboards, then screens again because the 3 rarely told the same story for long. Mary stood beside Ben Harper, the overnight planning supervisor, as he moved magnetic destination cards across a steel board. Why not let the software do this? She asked. It does. Ben moved another card. Then why are you doing it? Because the software changes its mind after people have already started moving freight. He pointed toward a monitor. At 9:45 p.m., the system froze the first outbound load sequence. At 10:10, updated carrier arrival estimates came in. At 10:20, customer priority requests were added. At 10:35, central planning sometimes reassigned doors to make space for trailers that were running late. Every change made sense by itself. Together, they turned the dock into a puzzle that someone kept rearranging while employees were solving it. Mari asked, "Who owns the cost of a late change?" Ben gave her a tired smile. "Depends which cost. If central planning changes a door and your team has to move stage freight twice, where does that appear? Labor productivity. Against Tacoma? Yes. If sales adds a priority order after the load is nearly built? Same. If a carrier updates an arrival after the schedule freeze? Usually us again." Mari looked at the screen. There it was, a system in which decisions were distributed, but consequences were local. That did not yet make it the whole answer. She had learned enough to distrust answers that arrived too early. At midnight, Adrian joined her near door 31, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. "I come in peace," he said, offering one. Mari took it. "You may be my strongest competitor, but right now you are also holding caffeine." "Exactly how I planned to win." They stood near the safety line, watching a trailer being repositioned. Adrian had found something real. 2 loading zones shared a limited pool of powered pallet jacks. Overall equipment uptime looked healthy, but short charging gaps happened during the busiest 90 minutes of the night. The result was not a full stoppage. It was a series of small waits that grew expensive when the dock was already under pressure. "That explains some of the lost minutes," Mari said. "Not the door changes." "No." He looked toward the floor. "I thought this exercise would be cleaner." Mari laughed softly. "That may be the test." "What?" "Whether we need it to be clean." At 12:42, one of the Spokane loads missed its target by 23 minutes. Mari followed the timeline backward. The trailer itself had arrived on time. Labor had been available. Equipment had been available. But 40 minutes earlier, a high-priority customer shipment had been added after sales received a late request. The request was commercially reasonable. No one had done anything absurd. Yet the dock had opened an almost complete load, inserted the freight, rescanned several pallets, and shifted another destination to a different door. The customer exception did not appear as an exception anywhere. It appeared as Tacoma being slow. At 1:15, Mari gathered Ben, Jasmine, Luis, and Tessa beside a small conference table near the floor. She placed her notebook in the center. "I have a theory," she said. "I want you to tell me why it is wrong." Ben looked surprised. Most consultants, Mari knew, asked employees to confirm theories, not break them. She drew a simple chain on the whiteboard. Plan released, freight staged. Late change arrives, door moves, freight moves again, departure slips, local metric worsens. "Where does this fail?" she asked. Luis pointed at the second line. "Sometimes the freight is already staged before the plan is released, because we know what usually happens." Mari crossed out the line and rewrote it. Jasmine stepped closer. "You're also missing trailer availability. We might know door 18 is the right door, but the empty trailer assigned to it hasn't arrived yet." Mari added that. Ben said, "And central planning is not changing things for fun. They're trying to protect network service. If Portland is late, they need somewhere to put the load." "Good," Mari said. "Keep going." For 20 minutes, they dismantled her first theory. It became better each time. The real problem was not simply too many changes. A logistics network had to change when reality changed. The problem was that Harbor and Pine treated every change as though it had no downstream cost until Tacoma failed to absorb it. No shared rule defined when a late change was worth making. No common measure followed the decision across departments. No single view showed everyone what had already been moved, restaged, or reopened. At 2:08, Tessa leaned back in her chair. "We've complained about this for months." Mari capped the marker. "Complaining and measuring are different." "How would you measure it?" "I don't know yet." Tessa studied her. Mari almost added something more confident. She stopped herself. "I know what I would test first," she corrected. "That is not the same thing." Later, alone in the hotel room Harbour and Pine had booked near the waterfront, Marie sat on the edge of the bed with her shoes still on. It was nearly 3:30 in the morning in Washington and 6:30 in New York. Her phone buzzed. "Elena, you awake, Anak?" Marie called immediately. Her mother answered with kitchen sounds in the background. "You should be sleeping," Elena said. "So should you. I am making breakfast. That is unfairly responsible." Elena laughed. Marie told her about the assessment, carefully avoiding confidential details. She described the noise, the changing plans, the strange feeling of competing with someone she actually respected. "You sound tired," Elena said. "I'm fine." "Marie." There was that one-word warning again. Marie looked at the dark hotel window. "I want this job." "I know. I don't want them to think I cannot handle it." "Handle what?" "All of it." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You have spent years thinking strong means nobody sees what something costs you." Marie said nothing. Her mother continued, "Maybe strong can also mean you know when to ask another person to carry one bag." The sentence stayed with Marie after the call ended. The next afternoon she returned to Tacoma and did something that would once have felt like surrender. Instead of disappearing into a spreadsheet alone, she asked Tessa for help. "I want to design a 6-hour test," Marie said, "but I don't want to design it without the people who will have to live with it." Tessa nodded slowly. "Now that," she said, "I can help you with." By 4 o'clock, Marie was standing in front of the same whiteboard with 6 employees around her. For the first time in the assessment, she was no longer trying to prove she had the answer. She was trying to build one with them. Marie's 6-hour test began with a rule so simple that several people assumed it could not possibly matter. No late change would be invisible. At 4:30 Saturday afternoon, she stood with Tessa, Ben, Jasmine, Luis, and 2 planners in a small room overlooking the dock. On the wall behind them, Marie had taped 3 large sheets of paper. The first showed the original outbound plan. The second listed every requested change after the plan was released. The third showed the cost of each change in minutes, restaging moves, and affected loads. Nothing fancy, no new software, no consultant language, just a visible record of cause and consequence. Tessa folded her arms. "Corporate is going to love the paper. It is temporary. Good. I was worried we were becoming a stationary company." Marie smiled. The purpose was not to prevent changes. That would be impossible and irresponsible in a live network. The purpose was to make every exception visible before the dock absorbed it. If central planning wanted to move a door, the reason went on the board. If sales requested late priority freight, the request went on the board. If a carrier arrival shifted, the new information went on the board. Then the local team would decide, with the requester when possible, whether the service benefit justified the operational cost. Dana had approved the pilot only after Tessa confirmed it would not interfere with safety or customer commitments. "This is not proof," Dana reminded Marie before leaving them to work. 6 hours can tell you something. It cannot tell you everything." "I know." "Good. Finalists sometimes become very religious about their own pilot results." Marie remembered that sentence. At 5:20, the first change arrived. A Portland transfer was running 28 minutes late. Central planning requested that 2 doors be swapped to protect the downstream connection. Ben reached for the dry erase marker out of habit. Marie stopped him gently. "Board first." He wrote the request on the second sheet. Jasmine estimated the restaging cost. 12 pallet moves, probably 9 minutes if nothing else changes. Tessa called central planning. They accepted the cost because the delayed Portland freight served 3 time-sensitive morning deliveries. The change happened. But this time, it did not disappear into Tacoma's numbers without context. At 6:05, another request arrived. A customer services manager wanted a small priority order inserted into a Boise trailer already 80% built. The request would require reopening the load and moving staged freight. Ben looked at Marie. "This is usually where we just do it," Marie asked. "What happens if we don't?" "The order leaves tomorrow instead." "Customer impact?" "Annoyed, not stranded." Contract penalty? None. Tessa called the customer services manager and explained the trade-off plainly. The manager paused, then withdrew the request. Luis laughed from across the table. That has never happened. What? Mari asked. Someone deciding they don't need an emergency after they see what the emergency costs. At 7, the dock was still on schedule. At 8:15, one trailer arrived without the expected empty equipment assignment. That delay had nothing to do with plan changes. Adrian's equipment theory appeared again. Mari noted it rather than trying to fit it into her own explanation. Tessa noticed. You're writing down something that supports Adrian. It supports Tacoma. Tessa nodded once. The strongest moment of the pilot came at 9:12. A regional sales director called personally. One of Harbour and Pine's larger customers had asked to add 6 pallets to an outbound load scheduled to close in 18 minutes. The request mattered. The customer had a major promotion beginning Monday. Ben looked at the clock. If we take it, we probably miss the departure. Tessa looked at Mari. Mari knew this was the kind of moment candidates secretly wanted. A clean decision. A chance to demonstrate firmness. But real operations rarely rewarded dramatic certainty. Can the carrier hold 12 minutes without affecting the next appointment? Mari asked. Ben checked. Yes. 12, maybe 15. How much time to load the 6 pallets if we give them a dedicated lane and no other restaging? Jasmine answered. 10 if everything is ready. Are they ready? 5 are. 1 is still being wrapped. Mari turned to Tessa. This is your building. Tessa raised an eyebrow. You're the candidate, and I'm not your boss. For half a second, no one spoke. Then Tessa smiled. We take it with conditions. Sales owns the exception. Carrier confirms the hold. If pallet 6 is not at the door in 7 minutes, it rolls tomorrow. Mari nodded. That is what I would do. The 6th pallet arrived in 6 minutes. The trailer departed 9 minutes after its original target, still within the carrier's confirmed window. More important, the decision had not forced 3 other loads to absorb the cost. By 10:30, the pilot period ended. 2 outbound loads had left early. 3 had left on time. 1 had left 9 minutes after target with an approved exception. No one celebrated. Mari insisted on that. One good shift is not a cure, she told the team. Tonight could be luck. Luis leaned against the table. It did feel less stupid. That earned a laugh from everyone. Mari wrote his exact words in her notebook. Later, while she was gathering the paper sheets, Adrian walked in. He had spent the evening testing an equipment allocation model with another supervisor. How'd it go? He asked. Promising enough to be dangerous? He smiled. Same. They compared only what the assessment rules allowed. Adrian had confirmed that small equipment gaps amplified delays during peak periods. Mari had confirmed that decision visibility reduced unnecessary rework. Neither explanation replaced the other. You know, Adrian said, one of us is going to have to present a recommendation that includes something the other found. Mari looked at him. Then we should. He seemed relieved by the answer. Good. At the hotel, Mari showered, changed into a sweatshirt, and finally sat down with room service tea and the remains of a sandwich she had barely touched earlier. Her phone lit up with a video call. Ramon Reyes. Her father's face appeared from Iloilo, bright daylight behind him. He was sitting outside a small repair shop, a towel draped over one shoulder. Anak, he said, smiling. Your mother says America is making you work on weekends now. Mari laughed. America has been doing that for years. They talked about the job, the weather, Nico's classes, and the mango tree near Ramon's home that refused to grow straight. Then Ramon studied her face. You are worried. I am competing for something I really want. Ah. He nodded as though she had described a familiar machine problem. When you were 8, you tried to carry every grocery bag from the jeepney in one trip. Mari smiled. I remember. You dropped the bread. You laughed at me. Because you said a second trip meant you were weak. Mari looked down. Ramon's smile softened. You always wanted to carry everything, Anak. Maybe now you learn that making 2 trips is still arriving. After the call, Mari opened her notes again. Near midnight, a text appeared from an unfamiliar Seattle number. Lily says thank you for helping her grandpa get there. She also says my old coat is embarrassing. She is correct. Arthur Mari smiled. She typed a reply, erased it, then wrote only, "Tell Lily I'm glad you made it." For once, receiving gratitude did not feel like owing anything back. It simply felt like being connected to the consequence of a choice. On Monday morning, she would have to explain what Tacoma had taught her. The answer was no longer that one department needed to work harder. It was almost the opposite. The network needed to stop making one group carry every bag. Sunday morning was the first quiet stretch Mari had experienced since leaving New York. The silence made her nervous. She sat near the window of the hotel lobby with a laptop, 3 pages of handwritten notes, and a cup of tea that had gone cold before she remembered to drink it. Outside, Tacoma's waterfront was washed in pale winter light. Cargo cranes stood over the distance, still enough to look painted against the sky. On her screen was the title of Monday's presentation, Tacoma, From Local Delay to Shared Decision Cost. Mari disliked the title. She deleted it, then typed another. Why Tacoma is late when Tacoma is not the only one deciding. Better. Still too long. She deleted that too. Having a fight with PowerPoint? Mari looked up. Adrian stood beside the table carrying a laptop bag and a paper cup. PowerPoint started it. He nodded toward the empty chair. Mind if I sit? I promise not to steal your recommendation. If your recommendation needs stealing, we are both in trouble. He sat. For a while they worked without speaking. The situation should have felt awkward. 2 people competing for one job, preparing presentations that would determine which of them received it. Instead, the quiet felt strangely companionable. Adrian finally closed his laptop halfway. I've been with Harbour and Pine 9 years. Mari looked at him. That sounded like the beginning of a confession. Maybe it is, he smiled. I wanted you to know because if they choose me, I don't want you thinking there was some internal decision made before you arrived. Mari studied him. You think I'd assume that? I might, in your position. She appreciated the honesty. And if they choose me, she asked, then I will be annoyed for at least 24 hours. Mari laughed. After that? I'll probably ask you what you saw that I didn't. He opened his laptop again. That is either very mature or excellent interview. Strategy. Why can't it be both? By noon, Mari had built her recommendation around 4 changes. First, Harbour and Pine needed one shared measure for late operational changes, regardless of which department initiated them. Second, every change after the initial plan release needed a visible owner and an estimated downstream cost. Third, Tacoma needed a protected schedule window during its busiest outbound period, with exceptions allowed only when the service benefit clearly justified the disruption. Fourth, equipment availability needed to be measured by peak window access, not by daily uptime. That part came directly from Adrian's observation. Mari hesitated before including it, not because she wanted the credit, because she worried the panel might ask why she was using another finalist's finding. Then she remembered what she had told Tessa. It supports Tacoma. She left it in. At 2, she returned to Bellevue with Dana. The official presentations would happen Monday morning, so Harbour and Pine had booked another hotel near headquarters. In her room, Mari finally called home. Elena answered from the apartment kitchen. Nico appeared behind her carrying a laundry basket. There she is, he said. Corporate America's most expensive standby passenger. Mari frowned. Ma told you everything. Everything except apparently the part where you planned to hide unemployment forever. I was going to tell you. When? At my retirement party. Elena swatted him lightly with a dish towel. Mari smiled, then grew serious. I didn't want you worrying about money. Nico set the basket down. We already worry about money. We just normally do it together. Mari looked away from the screen. Elena said gently, Tell her. Tell me what? Nico leaned against the counter. I picked up 2 tutoring shifts at school. Ma moved 1 bill date. We're fine for this month. Mari's immediate reaction was irritation. You shouldn't have to do that because I lost my job. Nico's expression changed. I'm 20. I can tutor algebra. I know, but your class is ate. The word stopped her. You're my sister, he said. Not my emergency fund, not my manager. My sister. Mari felt something inside her resist, then soften. For years, being the oldest child had become a private job description. She noticed bills before anyone asked. She checked Nico's tuition deadlines. She translated confusing letters for Elena. She sent money to Ramon when repairs at the shop were slow. Those things came from love. But somewhere along the way, Mari had begun treating receiving help as evidence that she had failed to provide enough of it. I'm sorry, she said. Nico blinked. For what? For acting like your help belongs to me only when I'm the one giving it. Elena smiled quietly. Nico shrugged. That was almost profound. Do not ruin it. They laughed. Monday morning, Mari arrived at Harbour and Pine at 7:45, wearing the same navy blazer, now professionally pressed by the hotel overnight service. The presentation room held Evelyn Ross, Daniel Kim, Dana, Tessa by video, and two finance leaders Mari had not met. Arthur was absent. Mari was relieved. She did not want his gratitude anywhere near her performance. Adrian presented first behind closed doors. 45 minutes later, he emerged looking composed and impossible to read. Good luck, he told her. Then it was Mari's turn. She began without a dramatic story. Tacoma does not have one delay problem, she said. It has a decision accounting problem. Multiple parts of the network can change the plan, but almost all of the operational cost appears at the site expected to absorb those changes. She showed the timeline from Saturday night. Original plan, late carrier information, door reassignment, customer exception, restaging, departure impact. Then she showed the pilot. Not as a victory, as evidence worth testing again. Evelyn asked, Your protected window reduces flexibility. What happens when an important customer needs an exception? We make the exception when it is worth making, Mari said, but we stop pretending exceptions are free. Daniel asked, Who decides what is worth it? A defined owner based on service value, not whoever happens to answer the phone first. Finance challenged the implementation cost. Mari proposed 30 days before any software investment, common definitions, manual exception tracking, a peak equipment measure, and weekly cross-functional review. If the data confirmed the pattern, then automate it. Why not buy the tool immediately? One executive asked. Because bad process in faster software is still bad process. Tessa smiled on the screen. At the end, the door opened. Arthur entered quietly and sat at the far end of the table. He had apparently listened to enough to ask only one question. Your Saturday pilot improved departure performance, he said. Why not roll your method across Tacoma tomorrow? Mari knew what the confident answer was supposed to sound like. Because it worked. Because I solved it. She chose the more difficult answer. Because one good night can lie to you. Arthur's expression did not change. Mari continued. We had 6 hours of favorable evidence. I would run the test across different volume patterns, different customer mixes, and at least one difficult carrier night. Leadership becomes expensive when someone falls in love with being right too early. Silence held for a moment. Then Evelyn closed her folder. Thank you, Mari. Outside the room, Dana walked her toward the elevator. When will you decide? Mari asked. Today. What time? By 5. Mari looked at the clock. 10:32 a.m. 4.5 hours. For once, there was nothing left in her hands to fix. She simply had to let other people decide what her work was worth. Mari spent the first hour after her presentation trying not to check her phone. She failed every 6 minutes. By 11:30, she had walked 3 blocks from Harbour and Pine, found a small cafe, ordered tea, and read the same paragraph of an online article 4 times without understanding a word. At noon, she closed the browser. Waiting had always been difficult for her because waiting looked too much like doing nothing. So she walked. Bellevue's downtown streets were bright, beneath a clearing sky. Office workers moved between glass towers, carrying lunch bags and coffee. Buses sighed at curbs. A delivery driver stacked boxes beside a lobby entrance while checking names against a handheld screen. Marie noticed all of it automatically. Routes, handoffs, small systems holding ordinary days together. For the first time, she wondered what it would feel like to work somewhere that allowed her to shape those systems instead of quietly repairing them from below. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out too quickly. Nico. "Did they make you CEO yet?" Marie typed back. "Yes. First act as CEO is banning your phone." His reply came immediately. "Power trip. Knew it." Marie smiled and kept walking. A few blocks later, she saw a Filipino bakery tucked between a dry cleaner and a small grocery store. The sign in the window advertised ensaimada, hopia, and fresh pan de sal. The smell when she opened the door took her instantly back to Roosevelt Avenue and Saturday mornings with Elena. An older woman behind the counter greeted her warmly. Marie bought 2 pieces of ensaimada and a small bag of pan de sal. She had no practical reason to carry around Seattle. Sometimes familiarity was reason enough. She sat near the window and called her father. Ramon answered from Iloilo with the camera pointed at the ceiling. "Pa, I can see the fan." 1 second. The image shifted abruptly, then settled on his face. "Better?" "Much." "Did you get the job?" "They haven't decided." "Then why do you sound different?" Marie looked through the bakery window. "Different how?" "Less like you are chasing something." She considered that. Maybe he was right. "I think I finally did everything I could do." Ramon nodded. "Good. That's all?" "What else?" "If you get it, good. If you do not, you are still the same person who crossed the country and found the problem." Marie smiled. Her father had a way of making ambition sound less like a verdict. At 3:38, her phone rang. Dana Cho. Marie sat straighter. "Hi. Where are you?" "About 4 blocks from the office." "Can you come back at 4:15? Marie stared at the half-eaten pastry on the table. "Yes." "Ask for me at reception." Dana's voice revealed nothing. The call ended. Marie remained seated for 10 seconds. Then she packed the bread carefully into her backpack and walked back toward Harbor and Pine. At 4:12, she entered the lobby. Dana was already waiting. No folder this time, no smile either. That made Marie's stomach tighten. They rode to the 17th floor. The same conference room from Friday was occupied by Evelyn, Daniel, and Arthur. Adrian was not there. Marie sat across from them. Evelyn folded her hands. "Thank you for coming back." "Of course." "We completed the final scoring this afternoon." Marie nodded once. Evelyn continued. "Before I tell you the outcome, Arthur asked that we explain the process." Arthur leaned back slightly but did not speak. Daniel said, "The panel scored the field assessment independently. Arthur did not participate in your score." Marie looked at him. Arthur nodded. "I thought that was necessary." She appreciated it more than she could say. Evelyn opened a folder. Adrian's assessment was excellent. He identified an equipment access problem we had underestimated and presented a strong plan for correcting it. Marie felt oddly relieved to hear that. "He deserved to be here," she said. "He did," Evelyn replied, "and he remains an important leader at Harbor and Pine. We are discussing an expanded regional responsibility with him based on what he demonstrated this weekend." Then Evelyn turned a page. "Your assessment did something different. You identified a systems problem that crossed departmental boundaries, tested it without overstating your results, credited information discovered by other people, and changed your recommendation when employees challenged your first theory." Marie's hands were very still in her lap. Daniel added, "The director we hire will have authority. We wanted to know whether that authority would make the person more curious or less curious." Marie swallowed. Evelyn slid the folder across the table. "We would like you to become Harbor and Pine's Director of Network Strategy." For a second, Marie heard the sentence but could not attach it to herself. She looked at the first page. Base salary $184,000, annual performance bonus, relocation assistance, full benefits, a start date 4 weeks away. Her vision blurred slightly, not because the number was enormous in some abstract way, because she knew exactly what smaller numbers had been doing to her family for years. $980 left after bills, $742 for a flight, $36 for standby, $159 after the rideshare. Now the page in front of her represented room. Room to breathe, room to plan, room to stop pretending every unexpected expense was a private emergency. Mari looked up. "I have one question." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Only one?" "For now." "Go ahead." "If I accept, can I spend my first month rotating through Tacoma, Portland, and the planning teams that affect them before I change the process?" Daniel's eyebrows lifted. Mari continued. "I don't want my first act to be turning a 6-hour pilot into company policy. I want to understand who will carry the consequences." Evelyn looked toward Daniel. He nodded. "We can structure that." Mari took a breath. "Then I accept." The words came out quieter than she expected. Dana smiled first. Daniel stood and shook her hand. Evelyn followed. Arthur waited until last. When he reached her, he did not mention LaGuardia. He simply said, "Welcome to Harbour and Pine. Mari." "Thank you." Then his eyes dropped toward her open backpack. "Is that pain de sal?" Mari stared at him. "You know pain de sal. 35 years in logistics. You learn where the good bakeries are." She laughed, the tension finally breaking. Outside the building, evening had begun settling over Bellevue. Mari called her mother before she reached the corner. Eleanor answered immediately. "Well?" Mari tried to say the sentence normally. She could not. "I got it, Ma." Silence. Then Elena made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Nico shouted from somewhere in the apartment, "I told you they'd make her CEO." Mari laughed so hard she had to stop walking. When the call ended, she stood beneath the city lights, with people moving around her in every direction. 2 days earlier, she had been sitting at an airport gate, believing she had given away the one seat carrying her toward a better future. Now she understood something she had not understood then. The seat had never been the future. The interview had never been the future. Even the job offer in her bag was not the future. Those were only doors. The future was the person she would become after walking through them. Marie adjusted the backpack on her shoulder and started toward the hotel. For the first time in years, she was not carrying everything alone. 4 weeks later, Marie stood outside a distribution center in Tacoma at 5:42 in the morning and discovered that a new job did not make the rain feel any warmer. The building was already alive. Yard tractors moved trailers beneath floodlights, while forklifts crossed the polished concrete inside. The air smelled faintly of cardboard, wet pavement, and old coffee. Marie wore a new navy raincoat and an employee badge whose title still looked strange to her. Director, Network Strategy. For the first month, she had done exactly what she requested during the interview. No major policy changes, only rotations through Tacoma, Portland, and the planning office in Bellevue. The numbers on her laptop were beginning to feel like people instead of boxes. She had also learned something uncomfortable. Getting the job had been easier than deciding what kind of leader she wanted to become. Tessa Moreno met her near door 27 carrying 2 paper cups. "You're early again," Tessa said. "So are you." "I work here." Mari accepted the coffee. "Apparently I do too." Tessa smiled. Over the last 4 weeks, their conversations had become less formal. During Mari's assessment, Tessa had been careful around her. Now she disagreed freely, which Mari considered a good sign. They walked toward the planning desk. The 6-hour pilot Mari had tested during her interview had been repeated 11 times. Routing decisions made remotely now received earlier input from the people handling the freight. The change reduced last-minute door swaps and unrealistic schedules. The results were promising. Not perfect, promising. That distinction mattered to Mari. At 6:10, Ben Alvarez waved her toward a monitor. "We've got a problem with the Portland transfer," he said. Mari leaned closer. A major retail customer had added late volume overnight. Under the old process, Tacoma would absorb the change, reshuffle 3 outbound loads, and hope Portland could catch up later. Under the pilot, the volume would be held for a later departure, unless both sites agreed they could handle the adjustment. The system showed a red warning. Portland had declined. Ben rubbed his chin. Sales is pushing us to override it. Why? Customer wants everything moving today. Can Portland receive it? Not without pushing 2 other loads. Murray looked at the clock. A month earlier, she might have rebuilt the schedules herself and tried to satisfy everyone. Now she asked, "Who owns the customer conversation?" "Priya in account management." "Call her." Ben glanced at her. "You want me to?" "You have the operating facts. I'll stay." 10 minutes later, Priya Sharma joined by video from Bellevue. She was smart, fast, and visibly unhappy. "This account is already nervous about the transition," Priya said. "If we tell them we're holding freight because of an internal pilot, they're going to hear instability." Murray understood the concern. "What did we promise?" she asked. "Same-day departure for orders received before midnight." "And what happens if we force the volume through?" Ben answered. "Best case, Portland catches up tomorrow. Worst case, 2 smaller customers miss their windows." Priya sighed. "The larger account represents 12 times the revenue." There it was, not cruelty, not incompetence, just a familiar pressure to make one promise visible by moving the cost somewhere less visible. Murray rested both hands on the desk. "Then we have 2 problems," she said. "We have a capacity problem today, and we have a promise problem that started before today." Priya's expression sharpened. Meaning we sold a guarantee our network cannot consistently support under peak conditions. That is not something we can change at 6 in the morning. "No, but we can stop pretending the warehouse should solve it alone." The room went quiet. Murray felt the old instinct to soften the sentence and volunteer to fix everything. She let it pass. "Ben," she said, "hold the added volume for the later departure. Priya, I'll join you when you call the customer. We'll explain the delay without blaming the pilot or the site. Then today we review how that service promise is written and who approved the capacity assumptions behind it." Priya was silent for a moment. "That could become an executive issue." "I know. You've been here 26 days. "I know that too." Priya's mouth almost became a smile. "Fine." 8 o'clock. When the call ended, Ben exhaled. "I thought you were going to tell us to squeeze it in." "So did I," Murray admitted. Tessa, standing behind them, laughed. By 8:15, Murray was back in a small conference room with Priya and the account executive. The customer was frustrated but reasonable. Murray explained that part of the freight would move 6 hours later than planned. She did not hide behind weather, systems, or vague operational language. She simply said Harbour and Pine had accepted more volume than the network could responsibly move in the promised window. Then she offered a revised schedule and a proposal for peak volume planning going forward. The customer did not celebrate, but they accepted it. At 10, Murray received a message from Daniel. "Need you in Bellevue at noon. Evelyn wants to discuss Tacoma decision." Her stomach tightened. Tessa noticed. "Bad?" "Too early to know." Murray gathered her notebook. Outside, the rain had softened into mist as she drove north toward Bellevue. Old Marie would have spent the entire drive preparing a defense. New Marie tried something else. She asked herself a simpler question. If she had to make the decision again, would she change it? No. That did not mean she was automatically right. It did mean she could walk into the room without pretending she had been powerless. At 11:57, she entered Evelyn's office. Daniel was there. So was Adrian Cole, now serving as regional operations lead. After the expanded role discussed during the final assessment, a spreadsheet was displayed on the wall. Evelyn pointed toward a chair. "Mari, sit down." Mari did. "The retail account called our chief commercial officer this morning," Evelyn said. "I expected they might." "They were unhappy about the delay." Mari nodded. Evelyn continued. "They were also impressed that someone finally told them why our peak volume promise keeps failing." Mari blinked. Adrian leaned back in his chair. They've agreed to a revised planning window for high-volume weeks, Daniel added, which means sales wants to revisit the same language in 6 other contracts. Mari looked from one face to another. So I'm not in trouble. Adrian smiled. Give it time. You work in logistics. Everyone laughed. Then Evelyn's expression became serious again. You made the right decision today, but I want you to understand why it matters. You did not protect Tacoma by pushing the problem somewhere else. You made the problem visible to the people who had authority to change it. Mari looked at the spreadsheet. For years she had believed competence meant being able to absorb pressure without letting anyone see the strain. Now she was beginning to understand that leadership might mean the opposite. Not hiding the weight, naming it clearly enough that the right people could help carry it. That evening, when Mari returned to her temporary apartment in Bellevue, she placed her laptop on the kitchen counter and saw the small woven jeepney keychain beside it. She had moved it from New York with only a few important things. Her phone rang. Elena. How was work? Her mother asked. Mari looked out at the unfamiliar city lights. Complicated. Good complicated or bad complicated? Mari smiled. I think I'm learning there's a difference. By the end of Mari's 3rd month at Harbor and Pine, she had learned the names of 43 people who never appeared on an organizational chart. She knew which dispatcher in Tacoma could spot a bad route before the software did, which Portland supervisor carried spare gloves for new hires, and which Bellevue planner always stayed 10 minutes late to explain an assumption instead of simply sending a revised spreadsheet. She also knew exactly how many boxes remained unopened in her apartment. 6. They stood against the dining room wall like evidence that part of her still considered Seattle temporary. On a Saturday morning in October, Elena Reyes arrived from New York and pointed at them before taking off her coat. You have been here 3 months. I've been busy. You own a couch now. It came with the apartment. You own plants. 2 of them are from the office. Elena narrowed her eyes. Excuses. Mari laughed and pulled her mother into a hug. Elena had taken 5 days off from the nursing home, something Mari knew she rarely did. Nico had stayed in Queens because of classes and a weekend shift at the campus computer lab. Ramon planned to join the family by video from Iloilo on Sunday. For months, Mari had imagined that once she earned enough money, she would simply solve every unfinished problem in her family. Pay off Elena's remaining credit cards, cover Nico's tuition, send more money to Ramon, replace the old refrigerator in Queens, build a cushion large enough that nobody she loved would ever have to worry in front of her again. Her first paycheck had arrived and she had immediately transferred more than half of it east. Elena sent part of it back. Mari had called, confused and slightly offended. Her mother had said, I asked for a daughter, not a bank. Now standing among 6 unopened boxes, Mari understood that the conversation had not been about money. It had been about the role she kept assigning herself. They spent the morning unpacking. 1 box held books. Another held kitchen things Mari had forgotten she owned. The 3rd contained family photographs, including a picture of 13-year-old Mari at John F. Kennedy Airport wearing a coat 2 sizes too large and gripping Elena's hand as if New York might carry her away if she loosened her fingers. Elena held the photograph up. You were furious with me that day. I was cold. You said America had too many stairs. It does. You refused pizza for 2 weeks. I had standards. Elena laughed. At the bottom of the box was the small woven jeepney keychain from Mari's old desk. She placed it beside her apartment keys. That afternoon they walked through Pike Place Market. Elena bought dried mangoes from a shop, even though Mari reminded her they could buy the same brand in Queens. They watched ferries move across Elliott Bay and drank coffee near the waterfront while clouds opened briefly enough to show blue sky. You like it here, Elena said. Mari looked toward the water. I think I do. That sounded painful. It's far from you. New York was far from your father? Mari looked down at her cup. Elena continued gently. Distance is not the same as leaving people. Mari knew that. Intellectually. Emotionally, the distinction had always been harder. Her phone buzzed with a work message. She checked it automatically. Elena sighed. It is Saturday. It's Tacoma. Tacoma survived before you. Mari almost replied that the message might matter. Instead, she read it carefully. A shift manager was asking whether she wanted to join a call about a minor routing issue. 3 months earlier, Mari would have joined immediately. Now she typed, "You have the framework. Make the call and send me the outcome Monday unless something falls outside it." She put the phone away. Eleanor smiled. "What?" Mari asked. "Nothing. Ma, I am watching progress." On Monday morning, that progress was tested. The manager's weekend decision had not been the one Mari would have made. It had also worked. He had redirected 2 loads through a later Tacoma departure rather than asking Portland to absorb them. The cost was slightly higher. The overall delay was lower. When Mari arrived at the office, an analyst named Claire was already explaining the numbers. "We saved about 4 hours across the network," Claire said. "But transportation cost increased by 9% on those loads." Mari looked at the screen. "Would our original plan have been cheaper?" "Yes." "Would it have moved on time?" Claire hesitated. "Probably not." "Then it was only cheaper on paper." That sentence became the center of a meeting later that week. Mari proposed a new review method for routing decisions. Instead of measuring only transportation cost, the teams would also measure the downstream cost of delay, rework, overtime, and broken customer windows. Adrian challenged her immediately. "Be careful," he said. "If every department gets to assign invisible costs to somebody else's decision, we'll create math that proves whatever people already believe." Mari nodded. "That's why we define the measures together. Who decides the weights?" "Not me alone." Adrian smiled slightly. "Good answer." The discussion lasted 90 minutes. Nobody left fully satisfied. Mari considered that another good sign. 2 weeks later, Harbour and Pine approved a 3-month network test of the broader measurement system. Daniel called it the most boring, important project in the company. Mari called it honest accounting. That evening, she returned home and found an envelope waiting in the mail. The return address belonged to Arthur Bennett. Inside was a folded sheet of construction paper. A child had drawn an airplane in blue marker. One stick figure stood beside it wearing a long coat. Another had dark hair and held what appeared to be an enormous rectangular ticket. Across the top, in uneven purple letters, were the words, "Thank you for helping my grandpa come see me." At the bottom was a smaller sentence. "I was scared, but he made me laugh." Lily Bennett had signed her name with a heart over the letter I. Mari sat at the dining table for a long time holding the drawing. There were no numbers on it, no salary, no title, no score from an interview panel, just the simplest possible explanation of what her choice had done. She had helped someone arrive. Mari placed the drawing on the refrigerator with a magnet Elena had bought at Pike Place. Then she opened the last unopened box. Inside were winter clothes, an old cookbook, and a framed family picture from Iloilo. She carried the photograph to the bookshelf and set it beside the woven jeepney. For the first time since moving west, there were no boxes left against the wall. 6 months after Mari joined Harbour and Pine, Lily Bennett finally met the woman whose name had become part of one of her favorite family stories. It happened on a bright Sunday afternoon at a company family open house in Tacoma. The distribution center looked almost unfamiliar, without its weekday urgency. One section of the yard had been closed to traffic. Folding tables stood beneath white tents. Employees brought spouses, parents, children, cousins, and friends. Someone from the maintenance team had arranged a display showing how a trailer's air brake system worked. Children wore oversized safety vests and competed to stack empty cardboard cartons without knocking them over. Mari had planned to stay for an hour. By the 3rd hour, she was helping a 7-year-old named Matteo construct a cardboard warehouse that had somehow acquired 4 loading doors, a rooftop garden, and a parking space for dinosaurs. "You need more docks," Mari told him. "You need more dinosaurs," Matteo replied. He had a point. Mari was searching for tape when she heard Arthur behind her. "I see your network strategy has become more ambitious." She turned. Arthur wore khaki pants, a Harbour and Pine polo shirt, and the same expression of quiet amusement he often carried when he caught executives taking themselves too seriously. Beside him stood a small girl with light brown hair pulled into a ponytail. Lily. Marie knew immediately. The child held Arthur's hand for only a second before letting go and studying Marie with open curiosity. "You're her," Lily said. Arthur smiled. "Excellent introduction." Lily ignored him. "You gave Grandpa your airplane seat." Marie crouched slightly so they were closer to eye level. "I did." "Why?" The directness of the question made Marie smile. "Because he was trying very hard to get to you." Lily considered that. "He says he looked terrible." "He looked worried." "He says the coat made him look terrible." Arthur sighed. "This family has chosen one detail and refused to release it." Lily grinned. Marie laughed. Then Lily became serious again. "Did you miss something because you gave him the seat?" Marie glanced at Arthur. He did not rescue her from the question. "I almost missed a job interview." Lily's eyes widened. "This job?" "This job." "Were you scared?" "Yes." "Then why did you still do it?" Marie looked toward the open warehouse. Families moved between tables. Somewhere nearby, a forklift demonstration drew applause. She thought about giving Lily a polished answer, something simple about kindness and courage. Instead, she told the truth. "I knew I would be upset if I missed the interview, but I thought your grandpa would remember missing you for much longer." Lily looked at Arthur. He had gone very quiet. Then she stepped forward and hugged Marie around the waist. It lasted only a few seconds. Children rarely understood when adults expected a moment to become ceremonial. Lily released her and immediately pointed toward Mateo's cardboard building. "What's that?" "A warehouse with a dinosaur problem." "I can fix it." Within 2 minutes, she and Mateo were arguing over whether a plastic stegosaurus belonged in receiving or shipping. Arthur watched them. "She is doing well," he said quietly. "I'm glad." The procedure that night went exactly as expected. The doctors were never particularly concerned. "She was," Marie nodded. "That matters." "It does." Arthur looked at her. "I wanted you to hear that from her, not me." Marie understood. For months, the airport had occasionally been mentioned around the company, but Arthur had been careful never to turn the story into company mythology. No newsletter profile, no speech at an executive retreat, no framed photograph of Marie beside some slogan about values. She appreciated that restraint. The choice belonged to the people inside it, not to a marketing department. They walked toward a quieter edge of the yard. Arthur nodded toward the families around them. "How is your frontline development proposal coming?" Marie smiled. "You came to a family event to ask me about a proposal." "I'm 72. I have learned to disguise work as conversation." The proposal had started with a pattern Marie kept seeing during her rotations. Some of the best operational judgment at Harbour and Pine belonged to people who had never been invited into planning roles because they lacked the right degree, the right title, or experience expressed in the right corporate language. Ben understood flow better than some analysts. Tessa could identify staffing pressure before any forecast showed it. A Portland lead named Jonah had redesigned a staging process with masking tape and handwritten signs before anyone in engineering noticed the problem. Marie wanted Harbour and Pine to create a paid internal fellowship that allowed hourly employees to spend 6 months rotating through planning, analytics, customer operations, and network design, not charity. A bridge. "The budget is the hard part," Marie said. "Backfilling people while they rotate is expensive." Arthur nodded. "Is it more expensive than hiring outside every time we need judgment we already employ?" "That is the argument I'm making." "Then make it with numbers." "I have numbers." "Good." Sentiment makes people listen. Numbers make them approve. Marie looked at him. "You approve things." "Not this one." She raised an eyebrow. Arthur smiled. You keep trying to make me useful. You founded the company." "Exactly. My danger is that people hear my preference as an instruction." Marie thought about that. It was another kind of restraint she had not understood before becoming a leader, knowing when authority should remain unused. "Present it to the operating committee," Arthur said. "Let them challenge it." "They will." "I hope so." The following Thursday they did. Finance questioned the backfill cost. Human resources worried that employees who completed the fellowship might leave for competitors. One senior manager asked whether people without traditional educational backgrounds could handle the analytics portion. Marie did not become defensive. She showed the pilot design. She showed the selection criteria. She showed performance data from employees whose floor-level decisions had already prevented costly delays. Then she said, "We keep saying we want leaders who understand operations. We already have people who understand operations. What they do not always have is access." Adrian, seated across the table, was the first to support her. "Start small," he said. 8 people, 2 sites. Measure promotion, readiness, and retention. Finance agreed to 8. Human resources asked for 12 months of follow-up. Marie accepted both conditions. The program launched 6 weeks later, with a name chosen by the employees themselves. Harbor Pathways. Tessa refused to apply because she said she already had enough meetings in her life. Ben applied. So did 7 others from Tacoma and Portland. On the morning the first cohort began, Marie stood in the training room and looked at 8 people who seemed uncertain whether they truly belonged there. She recognized the expression. She had worn it herself in Arthur's office. Marie did not give them a speech about opportunity. She simply said, "You are not here because someone is doing you a favor. You are here because you know things this company needs to learn from." Ben looked down at his notebook and smiled. Marie felt something settle quietly inside her. At LaGuardia, she had given away 1 seat. Now she was beginning to understand that leadership could mean building more of them. The first real test of Harbor Pathways arrived during the busiest shipping week of the year. A winter storm moved across the Pacific Northwest on a Thursday afternoon, closing mountain passes, delaying truck arrivals, and turning carefully built schedules into suggestions. By 6 o'clock, the Tacoma planning room was full. Screens showed late trailers in red. Customer service messages multiplied. Dispatchers spoke in clipped sentences, while supervisors walked between desks with radios pressed to their shoulders. Marie stood near the center of the room and felt something familiar in her body. The urge to take control of everything. She knew this kind of night. At her old company in New York, she would have opened 5 spreadsheets, taken over the routing board, answered every message herself, and remained at the desk until nobody else knew which decisions belonged to them anymore. The behavior had once earned her compliments. Reliable, indispensable, unshakable. It had also made her exhausted, and everyone around her dependent on her exhaustion. Ben approached carrying a tablet. 3 months earlier, he had entered Harbor Pathways as a dock coordinator. Now he was midway through his planning rotation. "Portland can take the Sacramento volume if we move the Reno loads through Tacoma tomorrow morning," he said. Marie looked at the map. "What breaks?" "Tacoma starts tomorrow heavy." "What else?" "We pay extra line haul." "What else?" Ben thought for a moment. "Nothing we can't recover by Saturday." Marie nodded. "Who has confirmed Portland capacity?" "I did. Jonah checked the floor. And customer windows?" "Priya's team is calling the 4 accounts affected by Reno." Marie looked at him. "What do you recommend?" Ben hesitated. It was the same hesitation Marie had seen in the fellowship training room on the first day. The instinct to wait for someone with a larger title to make the decision safe. "Move Sacramento through Portland," he said finally. "Protect the longer customer windows. Recover Reno tomorrow." Marie handed the tablet back. "Do it." Ben blinked. "You want me to execute it?" "You built the plan." "What if the weather shifts?" "Then you change the plan." He stared at her for half a second, then turned and started giving instructions. Marie did not follow him. That was the hard part. Across the room, Adrian watched the exchange. "You looked physically uncomfortable," he said. "I was. Growth. Terrible experience." He laughed. For the next 6 hours, Marie did what her younger self would have considered dangerously close to doing nothing. She moved between teams and asked questions. She escalated 2 customer decisions that required executive authority. She approved emergency transportation spending when the established limits were exceeded. She checked that people were taking meal breaks. But she did not rebuild Ben's plan. She did not rewrite Priya's customer messages. She did not stand behind Tessa's shoulder and turn every flaw decision into her own. At 12:20 a.m., the final delayed Sacramento trailer departed Tacoma. Ben watched it disappear through the gate on the yard camera. "That worked," he said. Mari leaned against the desk. "For tonight." He smiled. "You really don't let anybody celebrate early." "I believe in controlled happiness," Tessa called from the floor over the radio. "Tell Director Controlled Happiness that door 18 is clear." The planning room laughed. Mari did too. The next morning, Daniel reviewed the overnight performance. The storm had caused delays, but fewer than the same type of weather event the previous winter. More important to Mari, the decisions had not depended on a single person. Ben had led one route redesign. Priya's team had renegotiated customer windows. Portland had rejected one transfer and accepted another based on real capacity. Tacoma had made floor adjustments without waiting for Bellevue. The network had behaved like a network. At noon, Evelyn asked Mari to come to her office. A year earlier, that invitation would have tightened every muscle in Mari's shoulders. Now she simply brought her notebook. Arthur was seated by the window when she entered. He visited the office less often these days. He had begun stepping away from daily decisions, spending more time with family, and serving as chairman without treating the title as a reason to occupy every room. Evelyn slid a report across the desk. "Your first-year review is next month," she said. "I thought you should see this beforehand." The report summarized 11 months of network results. Late transfer incidents were down. Overtime caused by avoidable schedule changes was down. Customer exceptions were being identified earlier. The improvements were meaningful but not magical. Some weeks remained messy, some tests had failed. One change Mari strongly supported in Portland had been abandoned after employees showed that it created more walking and less useful work. She was oddly proud of that failure. They had stopped something that did not work instead of protecting the person who proposed it. Evelyn tapped another page. "And harbor pathways?" Mari read. 2 participants had moved into permanent planning roles. 1 had entered customer operations. Ben had been offered a junior network planner position beginning in January. Mari smiled before she could stop herself. Arthur noticed. "That page matters more to you than the first one," he said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because the first page proves our process improved. The second proves improvement did not have to depend on me." Arthur nodded once. "Good." Evelyn closed the folder. "We want to expand pathways to 4 more sites next year. Adrian will lead the operating rollout. I want you to design the network curriculum with the first cohort instead of for them." Mari wrote it down. Then Evelyn added, "And take your vacation." Mari looked up. "My what?" "You have used 1 day in 11 months. I took Elena around Seattle for a weekend." "That was a Saturday." Arthur shook his head. "Hopeless." Mari looked between them. "The New York trip next week is technically personal." "It is 3 days," Evelyn said. "Make it 7. Mari started to protest, then she stopped. Old instincts did not disappear simply because a person recognized them. Sometimes growth was just catching the sentence before it left your mouth. "All right," she said. 7. The following Friday, Mari boarded an evening flight from Seattle to New York with 1 suitcase, no laptop in her carry-on, and no secret fear that the company would collapse while she slept. When the plane landed at LaGuardia, Eleanor and Nico were waiting beyond baggage claim. Nico held a homemade sign that read, "Welcome home, Regional Empress of Boxes." Mari covered her face. Eleanor was laughing too hard to help. "You encouraged this," Mari said. "Absolutely." Nico hugged her. For a moment beneath the bright airport lights, Mari was 13 again, newly arrived, holding too tightly to everything familiar. Then the feeling changed. She was not arriving because she had failed to build a life somewhere else. She was arriving because she finally understood that a life could grow in more than one place without dividing the heart that carried it. As they walked toward the parking garage, Mari glanced through the terminal toward the distant gates. Somewhere beyond security was the counter where, almost 1 year earlier, She had believed one decision might cost her entire future. She smiled and kept walking. She no longer needed to prove that she would make the same choice again. She only needed to know what the choice had taught her. Marie's 7 days in New York passed with almost no efficiency at all. She ate breakfast at noon, wandered markets with Elena, and even attended one of Nico's cybersecurity classes, understanding almost none of it and enjoying his amusement afterward. On Sunday, Ramon joined them by video from Iloilo, while Elena cooked pancit in the Jackson Heights kitchen. The phone stood against a jar on the counter, so Ramon could watch everyone move around the room. "You are thinner," he told Mari. "I am exactly the same. Seattle is not feeding you. Seattle has food. Rice? Yes, Pa, Seattle has rice." Nico leaned into the camera. "She's an executive now. She probably eats spreadsheets." Mari pushed him away with one hand. The apartment was still small, the elevated train still rumbled in the distance, and Elena still refused to replace a stubborn old rice cooker. For years, Marie had seen such details as problems her income should erase. Now some of them simply looked like home. Before leaving Seattle, Marie had offered again to pay the remainder of Nico's tuition. He had earned a departmental scholarship and told her, "I might need help later, but I don't need you to solve it before I ask." Marie accepted it. Eleanor had reduced one nursing home shift because she wanted more time for herself. Marie sent money when it was useful, and Elena returned it when it was not. They were learning help without control and love without keeping score. On Monday afternoon, Eleanor rode with Marie to LaGuardia. Traffic moved slowly through Queens beneath a pale winter sky. At the terminal curb, Eleanor hugged her longer than necessary. "You will call when you land?" "Yes." "And eat?" "Yes." "And take another vacation before next year." Marie stepped backward with her suitcase. "Now you're asking too much." Elena pointed at her. "Progress is fragile." Marie laughed and entered the terminal. Her flight to Seattle was scheduled for 6:40 p.m. She arrived early enough to walk without rushing. Near security, she bought coffee and watched travelers check phones and departure screens. Airports had not changed. Marie had. At the gate, she opened a paperback. 20 minutes before boarding, an announcement came over the speakers. The flight was oversold because passengers from an earlier cancellation had been moved onto it. The airline was asking for volunteers willing to travel the next morning. Hotel accommodations, a meal voucher, and flight credit would be provided. Nobody moved. Marie smiled faintly at the familiarity of the moment. Then a young woman seated across from her stood and approached the counter. She looked about 24. A garment bag was folded over one arm, and she held her phone so tightly that the case bent slightly beneath her fingers. Marie was not trying to listen, but the gate was quiet enough that pieces of the conversation carried. The woman had been moved from the earlier flight. She needed to be in Seattle that night, because she was presenting a graduate school project the next morning. The agent explained gently that her seat was confirmed now. She did not need to worry. The woman returned to her chair and released a long breath. Marie checked her own calendar. Tuesday held one internal meeting Adrian could lead, while Ben was presenting the First Pathways cohort review. He did not need Marie in the room to make his work legitimate. She opened her phone and typed a message. "Flight situation may put me in tomorrow afternoon." "Adrian, can you take the network meeting?" "Ben, present without me." "Do not move it." Replies appeared quickly. Adrian, "Yes." Ben, "Was not planning to move it." Then a second message from Ben. "But I'll pretend to miss your controlled happiness." Marie laughed. She stood and rolled her suitcase toward the counter. The gate agent looked up. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then recognition crossed the agent's face. "Ms. Reyes?" Marie looked at the name badge. Janelle Park, the same agent who had helped her find a standby route through Denver 1 year earlier. Marie smiled. "Hi, Janelle." Janelle stared at her, then glanced at the boarding pass in Marie's hand. "No," Marie laughed. "You don't even know what I'm going to say. I have a very strong guess. You need a volunteer." Janelle folded her arms. "Last time you volunteered for something at my counter, you had $36 and an interview across the country. I have more than $36 now. I'm glad to hear it. And the airline is offering a hotel. Also true. Mari placed her boarding pass on the counter. I'll take the morning flight. Janelle studied her. Is there an elderly grandfather hiding somewhere? No. Emergency? No. Life-changing secret chairman? Not that I know of. Janelle smiled, despite herself. Then why? Mari looked toward the chairs. The young woman with the garment bag was reading notes on her phone, unaware of the conversation. Because tomorrow is flexible for me, Mari said. Tonight might not be flexible for somebody else. Janelle nodded slowly. This time the transaction felt different. Mari was not gambling rent money or risking her only interview. She was simply giving something she could afford to give. Janelle processed the volunteer request and handed Mari a hotel voucher, meal credit, and a new boarding pass for the morning. Mari accepted all three. A year earlier, she might have believed accepting compensation made the gesture smaller. Now she knew better. Kindness did not become purer because the giver suffered more. Thank you, Janelle said. Mari shook her head gently. Caillou helped me that night too. I found a standby option. You kept looking, Janelle smiled. Maybe that's what airports are, people trying to help each other arrive. She walked toward the food court as evening settled over the runways and aircraft lights moved across the darkening pavement. Mari thought about Arthur reaching Lily, Lily's drawing on her refrigerator, Ben presenting without her, Elena returning money she did not need, and Ramon reminding her that making 2 trips was still arriving. For most of her life, Mari had believed strength meant carrying more. Her journey had taught her something quieter. Strength could also mean knowing what was hers to carry, what belonged to someone else, and when an open hand mattered more than a clenched one. A year earlier, she had given away a seat because an anxious grandfather needed it more than she did. That decision had changed her life, but not because he was wealthy or connected. The truth that mattered most was simpler. He had been exactly what he appeared to be in the one way that counted, a grandfather trying to arrive for someone he loved. And Mari had been exactly who she hoped she could remain, even after the titles, the salary, and the apartment with no unopened boxes. A person who noticed, a person who chose, a person who understood that compassion was not a transaction with the future. Sometimes a good choice opened an extraordinary door. Sometimes it simply made another person's difficult day easier. That was enough. Mari found a table and called Elena to explain the changed flight. Her mother laughed. Of course you did. Mari smiled toward the runway. This time there was no fear behind the decision, no desperation, no need to prove anything, only room in the schedule, room in her life, room to help without disappearing inside the help. Outside, a plane lifted smoothly into the night. Mari watched until its lights became small against the dark sky. Then she opened her book and waited comfortably for morning, knowing at last that arriving was never only about reaching the destination first. It was about the person you became on the way there.